Hello and welcome to this episode of the Life Illuminated podcast. I'm Maggie Kelly, your host. Maybe you've already heard this term negativity bias. And if you haven't, it's a psychological phenomenon that suggests that negative events have a much greater impact on us than positive events have on our brain. In fact, some research suggests that even 3 times as much of an impact on our brains as the positive, which is kind of frightening. But obviously, if that's the case, then it would be clear to notice that a negativity bias has a powerful effect on our behavior and our actions and even our relationships, right? So the problem is if we're not aware that we have a negativity bias and we bring it to the conversation, the interaction, the relationship, it's quite difficult sometimes for us to hear what other people are saying to us. Because if it doesn't line up to what we're thinking in our heads, then we don't want to really believe it. So negativity bias actually becomes part of our fixed identity, or in Buddhism, as they call it, ego clinging. And in that way, it becomes a sort of an internal denial, right? When someone says something that doesn't line up or fit your ego identity, you can't hear it. So for example, if I walk around with a negative self-concept and I believe that I'm not important and nothing I say matters, and someone tells me that I've been a huge contribution in their life, made this great difference and a huge impact on them, I would be much less inclined to allow that compliment to land. And I wouldn't be able to accept it really, because instead I'd be attached to my fixed identity, that fixed identity that I use as an example, that I'm not good enough and I don't measure up or that I can't make a contribution. It's almost like my head wants to make you wrong for challenging my fixed identity. So the fixed identity or ego clinging is, as you can see, is most often a huge part of our suffering, and we sometimes don't even recognize it as such. We spend inordinate amounts of time trying to rearrange our reality to conform to our own internal view of things, and we filter all of our experiences through our fixed identity so that we can try to continually maintain that fixed identity. That's why it's called ego clinging in Buddhism. So part of the purpose of a spiritual path is to help unmask and remove that armor of our fixed identity. And one of the main purposes behind the practice of meditation is to help us create a muscle around pausing in the midst of our conditioned behavior or thoughts and be able to see if we can gain some facility around noticing that that's what we're doing. Because if we can, then we can start to notice them as they're happening. Then if we can, we have a fighting chance of actually transcending the behavior in the moment. So being able to quiet your internal dialogue is actually the first step to being consciously aware of the thoughts that pervade your mind over and over again. It's only when you are aware of your thoughts or your behavior that we have any shot, any chance of being able to change them. But remember, though, that your spiritual practice can't just be limited to daily meditation. Okay, that's just not enough. It's a wonderful start and it's a great habit and a muscle to build, like I said. But the important thing to remember is that meditation provides an opportunity for us to then explore our internal mental state. So once you begin to settle your internal dialogue, over time, you're beginning to be more adept at noticing what that internal dialogue continues to insist upon telling you. So good or bad, it's then that you are fully aware and can actually have an opportunity to alter that conversation, right? So ask yourself questions as those thoughts arise. How does what I think make me feel? Or and conversely, how does how I feel make me think? What thoughts are arising? Whenever you get a feeling that there's an issue that needs to be addressed, just look at it more closely. That's the practice. That's the practice in meditation that allows you to pause and notice the behaviors and the thinking. So if you notice them, then you can look at more closely. And as you deepen your practice, you're going to better be able to see and discern which issues are important and which ones aren't. So here's my big piece of advice. Don't allow yourself to get discouraged when you lose your awareness, please. Because when it's a natural phenomenon to go in and out of awareness. Deepak Chopra, who was one of my greatest teachers, used to say that it's like a wave. You'll be aware, and then you'll be in mental chaos, and then you'll be aware, and then you'll be in mental chaos. That's natural. So the best news about noticing that you've lost awareness is the mere fact that you are aware enough to notice that you did, right? And this is why if you've been to Satsang House and I've taught meditation to you, you understand that I use a mantra to help you become aware of that your mind has strayed, your thoughts have drifted, and using the mantra to bring yourself back to the present moment. That's the training that we employ for this deeper part of the practice. So this week, just try. I want to see if you can start to notice when your mind might immediately favor that negative thought, as opposed to allowing you to entertain the positive, even as a possibility. So even if you end up noticing after the interaction has passed, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Remember that all we're doing here is creating practices of awareness so that we can become more present to our behaviors in the moment over time. So keep reminding yourself that this is a practice, okay? Just keep reminding yourself you are practicing. That's why they call it a meditation practice. It's not a meditation perfection, right? So allow yourself some breathing room and a lot of self-compassion. Remember that in any new habit is really easy to start, but a little tougher to maintain. And it's okay. You can try and miss a few times, and that's okay. Just keep practicing, reminding yourself that as long as you actually begin to notice and become aware of some of your conditioned behaviors and fixed ways of being, then you're already on the path. And it's okay to start over each day. It's okay. So commend yourself first for being on the path. Keep encouraging yourself to learn and observe. Keep investigating. Keep asking the questions. Stay in the inquiry. Keep learning. So for more practices and support, consider visiting me for a private spiritual life coaching session at the Satsang House in San Diego, or schedule yourself on my calendar for a Zoom session, and let's get to work on becoming more aware together and see if I can support you in any way. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Life Illuminated podcast or to this subscription, please by all means do, and rate and review us, and be sure to stay tuned for the next upcoming episode of the Life Illuminated podcast, Maggie's Mindful Moments. Until then, happy practicing. Don't give up. Have a lot of self-compassion, and let me know if there's anything I can do to support your practice. I'd love to help. Take care.